Welcome to Hiring Happy Humans, where we talk about all things HR with a variety of folks, from CEOs to community partners, sharing up-to-date trends, best practices, and our wild workplace stories. Each interview is designed to leave you with the knowledge to keep your sanity. I'm your host, Dawn Sipley, of Sipley the Best. Thanks for joining in, and let's jump into this week's episode. Welcome back, everybody. We are so happy to have you join us today. We are just thrilled to have Marc Stanakis with us with Jobs Partnership. Marc, you've been with Jobs Partnership for some time now, haven't you?
I have, Dawn. I actually started the organization in 1999, so we're celebrating over 23 years of helping people in our community find better job opportunities.
That's amazing. And so I had kind of read through your LinkedIn profile before we met, and you had kind of talked about this discontentment on making an impact. What really led you to have the vision of Jobs Partnership? Because it is kind of a unique program here in Central Florida.
Yeah, it really is. It was a journey, as you might imagine, and for me, really inspired and motivated by my faith. Just sensing that God had something so much bigger for me than what I was doing. And not that what I was doing was bad or wrong or anything like that, but I just felt like, you get to that point where you're like, okay, I've climbed the ladder, I'm making a lot of money. Is this it? Like I found myself sitting on my LinkedIn profile in my corner office, downtown Orlando, looking out the window, like, okay, I made it. This is what I aspire to. And
Right.
Is this it? It was such a disappointment, And so,
could you share with us your age at that time? Because I find that these kinds of things typically happen in about a decade span.
Yeah, I was around 35.
Okay.
I started 32, 33. I would say I began to question, because I was relatively young to be promoted to the role that I was in. And so all my contemporaries were significantly older, like 15 to 20 years older. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do this for another 20 years. If this is all there is, I got to figure something out here. And so my heart was really being stirred and unsettled. And so, so it took me on a journey, and which ended up with kind of launching this, and I can see how those steps were ordained along the way. So it's kind of cool.
Isn't hindsight just so beautiful when we're able to kind of see what Christ has kind of woven together for us?
Absolutely. It's really cool.
We just bob along ignorantly following his lead, and then it's like poof, it's a masterpiece.
And,
looky there.
And it's encouraging too at looking back, because you know that God's got a plan for each one of our lives, and so the question is, are we paying attention and are we dialed in?
Right.
Once you start dialing in, man, it's pretty cool to kind of see how your steps are ordered and in ways that you could never have orchestrated.
Right. Now, did you have someone in your life that was an encourager that helped you facilitate that? Because I figure you stepped away from a very healthy salary and starting a nonprofit, you probably went straight to zero. So did you have someone that was like, be bold, go for it? Like, what did that transition look like? Because I find a lot of people will have that stirring. I mean, I certainly had that stirring a number of years ago in my 30s as well. And the stirring wasn't enough. God had to shake me and like throw me out of the nest. And then I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. But did you have someone that kind of, pushed you along out of that nest?
Yes, I did. I had some really good people around me. My church was a great encouragement. Yes, so the short answer is yes, I did. And although not everyone was, so excited about, you're going to do what, or you're leaving this to do, and it wasn't like a real simple, I left this and went to this.
Right.
It was kind of this transition time, or this journey where God was directing my steps to connect with certain people in the community that ultimately led to this. And so there were several steps in between, if you will, that got me there. But one guy in particular was really pretty encouraging. he's no longer with us. His name was Rick Tesh, and he used to run the Economic Development Commission here in Central Florida,
Okay.
and was around for a long, he was a real key business leader in our community for a long time. And he and I got to be really good friends, and he was really encouraging me because he had been through that process too. He left that career in economic development and went on staff with Campus Crusade for Christ,
Oh, wow.
the organization that he helped bring to Central Florida as in his role at the Economic Development Commission. And so it was kind of cool. He had kind of been down that road, and he was really encouraging me along those same things, and introduced me to Jacob Stewart at the Orlando Regional Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that was how this whole thing then took off.
Okay.
The story of Jobs Partnership.
Okay, fantastic. So for the audience that's not familiar with Jobs Partnership, tell us what it is and how it serves Central Florida.
Sure. Would it be okay? Do we have time, Dawn, for me to just do a little bit of a tour through history here?
Please. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. This time is yours.
I mentioned that Rick introduced me to Jacob Stewart at the Chamber, and this was in 1998. And the Chamber had just gotten a big workforce development grant from the state of Florida.
Okay.
And it was, the purpose of the grant was the state of Florida asked Jacob and the Chamber, the largest pro-business organization in the state of Florida, to help them get connected to the business community. Because we were in 1998, it was the second year in the wake of the Welfare Reform Act of 1996.
Okay.
All of the laws had changed, and now people could no longer just receive checks, government checks,
Right.
For welfare. They had to go back to work.
Forever. Right.
Yeah.
I remember that. My mom was a welfare mom, and it was quite startling to her that she had to go get a job after so long.
Exactly. And so the state is like, oh my gosh, the laws changed, and we're going to be cutting people off from these checks. We got to help them get jobs so they can continue. So they had done a good job of kind of helping a lot of people get into work with not much effort, really. But now they were down to the hardest to serve folks in our community, and they had no access to employers. So that was the purpose of this grant, is to get the business community connected. And Jacob, in his wisdom, said, we can help you do that. But here's the reality. Businesses aren't going to hire out of the goodness of their heart. They need good talent to fill open jobs. And so so if you can present good candidates, they're in. And so that was also at that time in the history of our country, the beginning of the FaithBased Initiative. The faith-based office at the White House was established.
Okay.
Under George Bush, and Clinton initiated it, and then Bush fully implemented it. This faith-based initiative that allowed the government to contract with faith-based groups to deliver services. And so Jacob built in a component into the grant that would allow us to somehow figure that out and have a faith component as part of or a faith-based partner in this workforce development project. And could we get the churches involved as a safety net, as a support system to people who are struggling or trying to make this transition into the workforce? So the state loved it. And so they said, yeah, absolutely. And so I got hired through this connection with Rick, sent me to a conference in Washington, D.C., and I meet, it was the Summit on Churches and Welfare Reform. And so they had all these practitioners, and I signed up for a breakout session because I knew how to do conferences, right? And there was a couple of guys from Raleigh, North Carolina, who had started this thing where churches and businesses work together to help people get into better job opportunities. People coming from low-income backgrounds, people that were just struggling to survive, right? And so at that time, unemployment was so low, like it is now.
Right.
And so everyone was wide open to other options in terms of recruiting sources. So anyway, we brought the idea back to the state of Florida, and they loved it. They said, we'll pay you to replicate this program from Raleigh here in Orlando in Central Florida. And what we replicated was a 12-week training class that teaches people a biblical understanding of work. It's a soft skills training, along with career planning. Because and then once that's done, this training, it really is upskilling people in these areas, building their confidence and self-esteem, helping them to identify their skills and interests. And then the big idea is then you connect them to a network of committed business partners who will hire them into full-time jobs with benefits. So we successfully demonstrated that under the auspices of the grant. We did 2 classes with the African American churches and 2 classes with the Hispanic churches, and it worked. And so those of us that were involved at the chamber and all the businesses said, hey, this is too good to let go. Let's form a nonprofit. And here we are 23 years later.
Wow. Wow.
So that's kind
amazing.
of it's really been a cool journey. And the need for what we're doing never goes away. There's this eroding work
It
ethic.
changes and it morphs, but it never goes away, right?
Never goes away. This whole idea that people's understanding of work and their responsibility in it and God's design in it, I think has been corrupted. And so
by culture.
By the culture.
Yeah.
And by bad examples, right? In families. And so people don't understand what it means to work, or to value work, or their role in work. And so in good times and bad, we're needed. We're to upskill, and never so much than now where there's a shortage of workers. And your only option is to reach deeper into the community, deeper down the kind of skills ladder, if you will, and identify people that really want to work and then upskill them for the jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I love about your program, is that it is a 12-week program, and you must participate to reap the benefits of it. Having been a welfare child myself, I always found it quite awkward when the holidays would come around, or the churches would show up and just give you what they thought that you needed. And I didn't like Barbie dolls, and I didn't want these things, and it was very awkward to receive, and I was forced to receive graciously. And you were thankful for it because you knew that's, oh great, a new couch, it's pea green, but this one's cleaner than the last one that someone had given us. And so out goes the old stinky one, and in comes a new, fresher, other kind of smelly one, So the fact that people are given the dignity to work for the things that are provided for them and supplied more of an opportunity than a giveaway. One of my favorite books is When Giving Hurts, I think it's called. Yes. And it just really conceptualized what I knew as a child who had kind of grown up in that environment, and what I knew as a headhunter and a recruiter and someone working in HR and partnering with companies that had a funny mindset around things. You never value what you don't pay for, whether you pay for it with sweat equity or with your time or with, financial contions. So I love that earning process that job partnerships
because
does.
we were, if you understand that we were made to work.
Amen.
If you work, you're honoring God, right? And there's dignity and respect that comes from doing that, right? And then knowing that you're participating in the bigger scheme of things, right? That you're a part of making things better in this broken place that we live in, right? And so that really gives you purpose and meaning. And people are running around chasing purpose and meaning. It's in work. That's what you were designed to do.
Yeah. One of my favorite scriptures is Matthew 20, and it's the parable of the vineyard worker. And it kind of goes, they go to the center of the city, and, someone goes in the morning and they get paid X amount of dollars. And someone shows up mid-morning and they go out and they're offered the same money. Afternoon comes and another guy's offered the same money. They all come back to get paid. And the dude that's been working for 10 hours is like, that guy only works for 3. Like, what's the deal? And I had heard a pastor talk about the passage, and it wasn't, first off, what you negotiate is your business and not what other people negotiate, right? How many times in the workplace do we have this, oh, that's not fair kind of thing, when it's like, well, why did you take the job if it wasn't satisfactory to your needs? So that's one thing that I love. But then the second thing is more on the biblical basis, is blessed is the one who has the opportunity to labor in the presence of Christ. Like, aren't we so lucky to be able to show up and give our gifts and fulfill our calling and do the things that are blessings to others, where, all day, rather than the one who kind of shows up late and just gets a fraction of it,
Yeah, that's right. Amen. You're preaching now.
So share with me, I love the story of jobs partnership, but if an employer is going, okay, so now what? Like, call this guy and he just gives me people who love the Lord and are enthusiastic about working. Like, what are the programs? What does that look like as far as a business owner connecting with jobs partnership to maybe hire some of these folks that are going through your training program?
Yeah, so we're looking for business partners, okay? People and organizations, companies that really believe in what we're doing, right? That want to be a part of really helping to upskill and lift people up in our community, right? And get into better job opportunities. And so it takes the village, to use that cliche, right?
Right.
We're looking for partners that want to do that, and there's this benefit of you get to hire them, right? But we'd love for you guys to volunteer. Come and join us in the effort. You can teach a class, or you can volunteer in the classes and serve by helping someone do their resume, or teaching them interviewing skills, doing some mock interviews. There's just lots of ways for a business to engage in the process, right? In building up the people that we're serving. And so we're looking for partners who believe in that. We're also looking for business partners who, are going to pay a fair wage. That's a big deal these days, right? The cost of everything has gone up.
Sure
and
has.
Now more than ever, folks coming from lower income communities, and where a lot of times they're working in 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet, and they're still not making it, right? They need a decent wage. And, at this point, we really think, if you can get at least started at $15 an hour, you can at least make a go of it,
Right.
But anything lower than that, it's going to be really difficult. So, we're not advocating for a mandatory wage, law kind of thing. We're not in that. We're not going to get political about all that. We're just saying, for the folks that we're serving, they need at least this much. And all the research shows that if you can get someone into a full-time job, one full-time job with benefits, the chances for their economic mobility grow significantly. Because now
it's exponential, honestly.
Exactly.
If you look at the statistics, it is, you can change the lives of someone generationally by offering just that $2 or $3 more an hour, to pull them out of that and to provide opportunities, for folks that their children can see, that the impact that they can have, and things like that. So,
absolutely.
a lot of corporations, they look at that bottom line and what's it going to get them. And it's, I really believe not in like a corporate duty. I know some people want to use that kind of strong word, but as an employer, just a moral responsibility to the community at large, not just a one-to-one engagement to your workers kind of thing. I think if they can conceptualize that bigger impact that they have in the story of individual lives, that they'll never be without a beautiful line of applicants just waiting to be a part of their team.
Yeah, I think, we're looking for business owners that get some of what you're just describing, right? Like, when you understand the whole God's design for work, a business owner is creating jobs and really acting kind of like God-like in that regard, in that they're allowing people to step into opportunities that allow them to use those gifts and talents that they've been given to flourish and prosper and make our world a little bit of a better place, right? And so that's what a business owner is doing when they offer someone a job. Not when it's focused on me, then there's a disconnect, right? And I think it's going to be very difficult for people to survive in environments like that, right? But when the business owner realizes, no, I've been given this business for a purpose and a reason, and it's so that others might be able to fulfill what God's called them to do, that's a different story.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we're looking for, are businesses who get that at some level, right? But they still need workers, right? And so we're not saying, this is all this pie in the sky kind of ethereal kind of idea. We need good workers who are willing to do a good job for a decent pay. That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Now, for the individuals that identify that, I've just been in the service industry for so long, where I just had so much turnover. I always say jokingly, what do you want to be when you grow up, kind of thing. And if they haven't really identified that, and they feel like this program would be a good fit for them, how would they go about participating? Is there a cost to them? What does that part look like?
Yeah, so we raise all the money needed to run the program, so the participants don't have to pay.
Okay.
I mean, that they can enroll for free. But their cost is the time and effort and energy that they need to put into it, and we're very upfront and clear about that. It's 12 weeks, one night a week for 12 weeks, 3 hours a night. It's a big commitment, and there's homework. You got to do some work. You got to do a resume. You have to, there's things that you have to do to get yourself prepared for that better job opportunity. And so one of the things that, you mentioned, and I'll talk about here quickly, is part of our process includes an assessment. We do a career assessment with each one of the candidates. And so it's a career assessment that measures their skills and their interests, their values, their personality. And it really then recommends jobs or industries that probably would be a good fit for them. And then that's when a little bit of research kicks in, like, all right, let's research some of those jobs. Would you really like to be a welder? Or would you really like to work in hospitality? Or, whatever the case may be, start doing some research, and then use that as a foundation for a written career plan. We want them to walk out of there with, like, instead of just going around from job to job, bouncing around, as you say, and this turnover thing, get focused. Here's what I really want to do, or at least the areas where I feel like I can use my gifts, and then start pursuing that. And so that's a big part of the process, to help them get a little more clarity, instead of, oh, any old job will do. Or I know that McDonald's is around the corner from my house, or Walmart's over here, or we all know about those places, right? And those are good places for some people, but for others, they want more. And so you can do that.
It's something that I often see really highlighted when I attend job fairs is, you have your table set up, and obviously job seekers are approaching. And the first question I ask to gauge the temperatures, what are you looking for? What kind of job do you want? What interests you? And I just gotta say, they're like a deer in headlights, anything and everything. And, it might be the fleshly part of me, but it's just a hard eye roll when they say that. Like, you just give me something, or there's maybe just something that you don't want to do. I would even be happy with that. It's absolutely astonishing, with a third of your life spent as an employee in that role, and you have zero target or idea of the direction that you kind of want to gauge yourself in. So if the job seekers just leave your program, being able to answer that one question, you'll at least make my heart happy.
Yeah, well, and you bring up an interesting point. We found that one of our best recruiting sources is career fairs. We set up a table, we do the Orlando Jobs career fairs, Roger Lear and his team.
Yep, I was there.
We set up a table, and we actually presented at the last one. He had some breakout sessions, and same thing. They walk by and they look at our table, and they're thinking we're just another employer, right?
Right.
And we're like, what do you want to do? Well, I don't know. And then, when we tell them what we do, then you start to see the guard come down, the tears come out. They're confused. They're just walking around aimlessly talking to employers, and employers pick up on it like that.
Oh, we do.
Right? if you don't know what you want to do, I can't help you, you know?
Right. What am I supposed to do with that? I'm not,
Exactly.
and as philanthropic that I am, and as much as I love what I do, because we do, and it confuses some people that I'm dually rolled at Simply the Best. Yes, we serve businesses, and people understand that part, but they're like, you do career coaching? We don't barely make any money off of career coaching, but it's just so satisfying to take someone that is just confused and lost and burdened, and for a lot of men, especially, a little bit of shame and embarrassment around not being a provider to their family, and being able to take them out of that process and uncover those things, and just, just the process of discovery with them, I find just immensely satisfying. So I think it'll always be a part of our program. We don't need to make a dollar off of it, but just the impact that kind of walking that journey with folks makes is really remarkable. And not everybody, it's the old, you can lead them to drink or lead them to water, but you can't make them drink. There's some that are going to want to take it, and they'll do the hard work, and they'll show up to the class, and they'll invest in themselves, while others will continue, to be satisfied with the status quo. And I think differentiating between those is so important. So that's why I love, the participation that's required out of your program to get the introductions that these folks kind of get. I would love to hear, what are some of your favorite, partnerships that you have with businesses? Who are the businesses that have really backed you, that have shown up in big ways, that have been able to take Jobs Partnership to the level that they're at now?
Yeah, so it runs the spectrum, right? Everything from big publicly owned companies down to a small, privately owned business, and everything in between. So just one to highlight, is Advent Health has been a huge partner. Oh my gosh, for 23 years they've partnered with us. We have hundreds of hires there. Of course, there's a huge need in healthcare for workers. I mean, and it's growing even more significantly. But we've done some really cool things with them. I mean, sure, there's been those, hey, you need a job, especially on the non-clinical side. We need, people working in food service and nutritional services, or environmental services, or patient transport. That's kind of a very simple entry-level way to get into the hospital. Lots of folks kind of go that route. But we've done some real creative things with them as well on the clinical side.
Okay.
And just recently, we kind of resurrected an idea that we've done several times in the past, where we took a cohort of our participants in our spring classes, and they all got hired into full-time jobs with benefits at Advent Health, and were trained are being trained right now on the job as patient care technicians, which is the entry-level role on the nursing track.
Is that like a CNA?
Yes, correct. But it's a little bit of a higher skill level than a CNA.
Okay.
And so, and the way we did that is there was about 70 of our participants in the spring that were interested.
70?
Yeah. And then we started vetting them. We took them through a vetting process that worked really quite nicely, actually. And because, everyone loves they want to work in healthcare, but, I've got to bathe patients, and I've got to do bandages, and there's blood and smells, and,
It's real.
It's real, man. It gets real quick. And so we took them through a process to really understand what this job is about, and used some other screening tools. And so, and so then we identified 16 that actually passed all of those screening. And then they were hired into full-time jobs with benefits. We actually got 13 of 16. We lost a couple because they ended up taking other jobs.
Yeah, life happens like that.
Yeah, it happens, right? But they're in a full-time job with benefits on the nursing track, and if they want, they can keep going, and the hospital will pay for them to go back to school to become nurses. So that's one example, of a partnership that's working, really well.
Oh, and isn't there just such a ginormous growing need around elder care of all spectrums, in-house, in-hospital, transportation? We've got, that boomer age is kind of coming into that season where assistance is needed and things like that. So I love that you're just exposing people to that kind of thing, because I think some folks, especially that have generational poverty in their background, they don't even know the jobs available. They walk out their front door, they go as to the nearest establishment that has a piece of paper on the sign, they take the minimum wage or just barely above, and they show up every day until they're not invited back or someone offers them a quarter more.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Don.
That's the perpetual, and so they never get out. So I've always enjoyed going into high schools, doing field trips into facilities like manufacturing facilities or construction or different trades. The trades are just an amazing place to have good starting wages with a very high upward trajectory and a lifelong job security. I mean, as long as we're going to the bathroom, we're always going to need plumbers. And as long as we appreciate these lights and air conditioning, we're always going to need electricians. And so I love the trades and things like that. And I know you're heavily involved in the trades, correct?
We're wanting to be more involved with that.
Okay.
But I want to speak to something that you were just talking about, which is so true. People just don't know what opportunity is out there, right? I mean, even people that are maybe more savvy, let's call it, or they don't really understand what are all the options, because there's a lot, right? How could you possibly know everything? And so one of the things, you talk about success or partnerships that we've had, I'll shift a little bit and talk about a partnership with Valencia College.
Love Valencia's manufacturing program. It is amazing. I was there for the grand opening, and we've had a wonderful partnership with them. So what have they been able to do with you guys?
Well, and so, so what we're doing is, and the pandemic really kind of highlighted this or brought a more intense focus on it. And for me personally, doing this over the years, this is the most strategic way to get someone a better job, is get them into some skills training where they earn a certification that's in demand.
Yes.
And then get them
micro education is what I call it.
Yeah. And they, Valencia calls their program the accelerated skills training, because it's not a college degree. It's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks of training, depending on what the job is. So you mentioned advanced manufacturing. We've done a lot with that. Logistics, healthcare. They do construction. We've done some with that too. But we're trying to direct more and more of our participants into those training opportunities. And it's paid for by CareerSource. They have money to pay for training. And then after 8 weeks, 10 weeks, they get a certification. And then they Valencia puts them into a full-time job, and they're on their way. So we've done a lot of that. And during the pandemic, especially, I mean, I can think of two right off the top of my head, 2 single moms who were in hospitality and lost their jobs. Everything shut down, right? And they're like, I've got to figure out what I'm going to do next. And maybe I want to do something different. And so they came in through our program. We introduced them to this concept of going back to school. And one of them went back for healthcare. Another one went back for manufacturing. And so one is working at the hospital now, full-time with benefits, never had a full-time job, always worked part-time jobs in hospitality.
Right.
And the other one is at Lockheed Martin, working as doing the electronic board assembly. That's a big one.
Yep, the soldering and assembly and all that. Yep.
She loves it. She's doing great, and so, so just doing more and more of that. And we just got a big grant from one of our funding partners. We're going to start paying our participants a stipend to incentivize them to go through that training. So come through our training. We'll help you get into Valencia or Orange Tech, and then we'll pay you a stipend while you go through that. Because you know what? It's hard to go to school and still pay the bills, right?
Right.
If you're a single mom or someone who's been struggling financially, you don't just those bills and life is still there.
It's like a GI Bill for civilians.
Yeah. So you're getting a little bump to pay for gas, some food or rent.
That just gives me goosebumps. That is like, that's amazing.
So exciting. So we did some of that. We had someone gave us one of our individual donors gave us some money to do that. And so we tested it this last go round and it worked great.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think we did 14 people in training.
I think one of the biggest blessings in my life, because I certainly never thought I was college bound, that was for rich kids and whatnot, but I was emancipated as a minor. And that seemed to have caught the attention of my guidance counselor, because not a lot of kids, they may move out, but they don't go through the formal part and whatnot. And so she was like, you should do this dual enrollment thing. It was brand new back in the day. No one had ever really heard of it. And so she's like, you can go to Seminole State while you go to high school, just do this. And she kind of handheld me through it. And it just exposed me to college. And I showed up to campus and I looked around. I'm like, these people ain't no different than me. They're just showing up like I am, and I didn't have to pay. And I was blessed with financial aid, kind of that stipend that allowed me to only work one full-time job and go to high school and go to college. So I only had to commit about 75 hours a week to surviving, but it was something that I was willing to do to get myself out of the place I had been. And it was a long 4 years and it was certainly exhausting, but it did give me the opportunity through that exposure that I certainly, wasn't expecting, and was free because it was in dual enrollment. And then with that stipend through the Pell Grant and through Bright Futures and things like that, it gave me the financial stability, which poverty is so much more than a lack of resources. And I think people who've never experienced poverty don't understand the poverty mindset.
That's right.
And the worthiness and all those other kinds of things that go into it. So just exposing folks that enter your program to this world of opportunities and validating them and supporting them and letting them know, hey, you can be an employee at Lockheed, or you can, have a new career trajectory. And it doesn't have to be this never ending cycle of a job.
That's right. Oh, you're preaching again. No, we're on the same page. I mean, it's so incredible when you start exposing people to opportunity.
Right.
And I think it's one of the big, there's probably two big ideas, Dawn. Maybe it's helpful to insert this in our conversation. Behind the work that we're doing here at Jobs Partnership, there's two big ideas that we're tackling, if you will, two problems that we're trying to solve. One is that people coming from low-income backgrounds, from poverty, or from low-income communities, typically have a negative set of attitudes and beliefs about the way the world works.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I've been dealt this hand. I'm always going to be poor. Nothing's going to change. I'm always going to live like this. I mean, it's just you're a product of your environment, right? Yeah. It's just the way it's
easier than taking accountability. It's much easier to be a victim and go, this is what it is.
Yeah. And so our training is really designed to start tackling some of that.
Yes.
No, you were not made for this.
Right.
God designed you with purpose and with gifts and talents that you could do, that he wants you to serve in this world with, So that class, when they get to that one point where we talk about work, it's like the light bulb goes off. Yeah. It's like, okay, that means I can do something that I want to do based on how my gifts and talents. Yes, you can.
Right.
But so we start to break down, and that's where the biblical content in our program really, I think, works well. It's designed to really change your thinking around these things about work. And it's encouraging when they hear these lessons and they understand, I don't always have to live like this, right? The other big idea too is because until some of that thinking changes, they can't see opportunity, right? And so the other big idea behind our program is, and you alluded to it earlier, like people coming from these backgrounds as well, everyone they know is in the same situation.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, everyone they know is broke, and it's like they don't know anyone that can help them get into a better opportunity. And so, I mean, we live in a world that it's all about who you know. That's the way the world works, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you can do all the LinkedIn profiles and Indeed postings you want. Right. But at the end of the day,
a bunch of broke friends with no connections or resources. There's no wealth to share. I've certainly seen that. I was sitting the other day, I was helping a young man, and I said, what if I was in his position? What if I was homeless again? And I said, well, I would just call so-and-so, or I would call so-and-so, or, surely they would let me sleep on their couch. And I started thinking of all the immense resources that I had, and so I wouldn't be in the same position that he was, but it was because of the circle that I kind of surrounded myself with. And it was in my early 20s that someone shared with me that you're an average of your 7 closest friends or 6 closest friends or something like that when it comes to income. And have, young and immature and not spiritually fulfilled quite yet. I mean, my goal was just to have money. I was poor, I wanted money, and whatever I needed to do. So I was like, well, I need to change my friends, kind of thing. And so I started putting myself into really uncomfortable circumstances where I felt like I didn't belong. And imposter syndrome certainly creeps in around all of that, but I slowly started to change that circle of influence and the people that I hung around, and held myself to higher standards. And just by doing that slowly over the years, I've been able to cultivate a really healthy, I call it my village, and I'm the idiot that raises me up all the time and holds me accountable and provides resources and does good things, and just provides that encouragement rather than, well, this is what it is. And, it's just the man holding us down, and it's just the way America is, or, that's what the government's done to us, or whatnot. So that mindset change is super powerful.
Oh, it's so powerful. And then as I mentioned too, then having the social capital,
yes,
right, to really
love that word,
step outside of your the world that you always know,
right,
that isn't helping you move forward, right? It's a big step, but when you do it with people that care,
right,
then it's an easier step, and that's a big part of what we're doing here at Jobs Partnership.
Love it. So if someone wanted to reach out to you as either an employer or a job seeker and get connected with the program, like, what's the best way for them to make that initial contact?
Well, obviously our website, there's a place for the job.
It's a great website, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Very well done.
Oh, thanks. Well, and we're actually we're redoing it. And so
okay,
things we want to enhance. So, but there's a place for the job seeker to go and read about the program, and then they can apply. Now, the application only opens up twice a year, fall and spring. Those are our cycles of classes. Of course, they can always call our office too and talk to someone here as well. And then as far as the businesses go, absolutely. I mean, there's a page on our website for businesses, but they can reach out to me or one of my team members, Elliot Drake, who works with our business partners to kind of invite them into this process. He can be reached here at our office as well. So yeah, so I'm happy to talk to anyone who's interested.
Absolutely. Well, Simply the Best would certainly like to increase our partnership. I know we're kind of on the opposite ends of the Central Florida earth, with us in Sanford and you down south, but there's just so much great things that can be done. And I just really believe in your mission down there. So anything that we can ever do to bring resources or knowledge or expertise, either to businesses or job seekers, we would certainly love to do that.
Well, maybe we can chat about that. I have an idea if you want.
Okay. All right, great.
Okay.
So I always ask all of my guests one question at the end of the podcast, and it is, what would you tell your younger professional self that you wish you would have known way back when, that has just been instrumental in your success professionally?
Well, I think I would there's probably 2 things I would say if I could. And we've been talking a little bit about both of these things. Number one, I went to college, right? And I'm not sure how much, I guess it did help me, and one of the things this is one of the benefits of going to college. It does help you build that network, right? That social network. So that is one of the real benefits of it. But you pay a lot of money for that network, and so by going to college. But, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I think, when I look back, I would have thought about it differently. And I hope more and more people are starting to think about this differently as you see the escalating price of getting a college degree, and and then people are getting out and they can't get a job. I would really explore what are the high growth industries in your community or where you want to live, and what do you need to get a job in one of those. That's what I would have done. So a little bit like what we were talking about earlier. Where's the opportunity? And here in Central Florida, it's in advanced manufacturing, it's in construction, it's in logistics, it's in healthcare, technology. Like, all right, what are the jobs there, and what do I need to get those jobs?
Right.
A college degree doesn't.
It may or may not be a degree.
That's exactly right. It does not. I mean, I see that more and more, and I'm like, oh boy, I would totally look at this differently if I was starting over.
I really believe that we're going to see a huge shift in the way that people look at education. We live in a world where information is free and at our fingertips. So why participate in a formalized program when we could just be life learners and really good stewards of what our problems are today? That's one reason why I partnered with Brio Business Academy, is because it was where the rubber meets the road for small business owners. How do I buy my insurance? How do I write my business plan? How do I hire my people? And that's kind of what we don't need an MBA. I mean, those are great. I'm not knocking them. Wish I had one, but that's not necessarily going to lead to success. And how we define success needs to shift a little bit as well. It's not, the car and the house and the title. Sometimes it's just making an impact and having ample PTO or work-life flexibility and things like that. So I think our younger generation, I love Gen Z. I find them super fascinating. And Gen X is really interesting as they roll into leadership roles and whatnot. So we've got a very interesting decade or score ahead of us to watch these 40 somethings come into their own, and then watch these Gen Zers really decide what they're going to do educationally and what career paths they'll follow and stuff. It's going to be a season of a lot of change and redirection.
Well, and I think the other thing that, I would just tag along with all that is because of the speed of change now with technology, I mean, that college degree is almost obsolete in some ways.
By the time you finish it, right?
By the time you finish, right? And so you're seeing that with the younger generations, to your point, like, oh, I'm seeing opportunity over here, and all it takes is this much training and I can get that. And so you can navigate very successfully by just really paying attention to what's going on and getting the training you need to get the next opportunity. So I think that's going to be, you're going to see that more and more. And so anyway, that's what, if I was 18, that's what I would do.
Amen. Awesome.
And then the other thing I think is really important, I think people have lost sight of this because of technology, unfortunately, and social media, the value of building relationships. You don't build a relationship on social media. I mean, you're kidding yourself if you think you are. You really are, deceiving yourself. Now, I'm not against social media,
right?
But what I'm saying is it's not a substitute for face-to-face contact with people. This is okay. It almost feels like you and I are, I feel like we've connected here. We are face-to-face, right?
Yeah.
But something happens when you spend time with people.
Right. Break bread together. Absolutely.
Yes. And I think it's so important. And it's not always about what can I get out of that person. I think that's the other thing we're seeing a lot of is people, it's all about me and what I need and want. We've got to remember that there's a lot of people out there that are going through lots of stuff, and sometimes just getting connected and being a good friend is the right thing for you to do. Yeah. So you never know how relationships will play out in the long term. And so you've got to start building relationships, and that's done face to face.
A high EQ is much more valuable to me than a high IQ, I think. If you can go through life not irritating people and being a blessing and building relationships and know where you stand in any room, is just so extremely powerful. And I think you're right about the social media. We're more connected than ever with the highest rates of depression, the high skyrocketing suicides among our children, and one of my favorite interview questions is to ask, what is your relationship with social media like? Or what is social media, what is role in your life does that play? And I find that people who live inside of it usually have that lower emotional intelligence. They're more reactive. And so it's a very fascinating interview question when you kind of dive into what that looks like for individuals.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Very true.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today, Marc. I'm just so excited just to learn a little bit more about Jobs Partnership and how folks in the community can get connected.
Absolutely. Well, Dawn, I appreciate what you're doing and appreciate your heart. Thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit with you today, and look forward to meeting some of the folks that are interested in learning more about Jobs Partnership.
Absolutely. Everybody, have a blessed day. Thanks again for spending time with us today. If you want more HR stories and resources, go to simplythebest.com to join our newsletter. That's SIPLEY. Until next time, stay happy.